Yo ho ho, Buccaneer. Good to see you back. Now let's go through a few tips that are important to be followed during the component placement. In the previous video, we learned about various common problems that may occur while designing a PCB. But every problem has a solution, and all you have to say is, wherever we want to go, we'll go. Now that was an original quote. So steady, all hands ahoy. Number 1. Know the mechanical constraints and fitting. If the designer just aimlessly designs the board with no idea about the space, the board is likely to get busted. This time, rather than taking the example of my ship, I'll take the example of an apartment. While buying an apartment, if a person is not too rich, of course, they will buy something which is just enough to fit the family and whatever furniture and other stuff they own. Keeping this in mind, design the board such that all the components could fit easily without leaving space much more than needed. Number 2. Place the components within the assembly area, or rather say, determine the assembly constraints on the board. Like in an apartment, you are not gonna place the gas stove in the living room or a cupboard directly next to the door. Similarly, if the PCBs are manufactured on the conveyor, you may not want to place them too close to the edges. Number 3. Give the components room to breathe. Anyone wouldn't like a chair placed such that there's no room to spread your legs, or are you not normal? Even the components need to spread their legs. In case if ICs, they need space to dissipate heat. So you may want to avoid placing other components in this area. Also, keep the spaces enough to lay down the tracks. Otherwise, just imagine placing all your furniture in your apartment and having almost no space to walk. That may even happen if a person keeps his room messed, but that's another story. My heart is not that person, right? Number 4. Keep similar components facing in the same direction. Best example I can give here is of the living room. Everyone would want their chairs or couches facing the television, won't they? Similarly, placing the components with the same orientation, or say keep all the similar ICs having their notch or the first pin of the IC facing in the same direction. This reduces the confusion about the placing of the ICs and avoids damage to the components as well as to the board. And finally, number 5. This one is the last tip from my side. That the one tip that's too obvious to even pen it down. First, place the components that are close to the edge of the board, such as the power jacks, the power sockets, ports, etc., and then place the components slowly towards the center that may include the processor or the controller. Also, keep the parts on a single layer to avoid confusion while soldering and try not to overlap any parts. In rare cases, the smaller parts like the crystals may be placed below larger parts like microcontrollers. Otherwise, it is better to avoid overlapping. Okay, this was one heck of a lengthy theory video, but this is what happens when you try to make someone an artist the easy way. Well, remember, even if you are spending 90% time placing the components, there is no need to worry unless you are not running out of deadlines. So that's all, mates. In the practical, we'll see more important facts so that your boards are much more perfect. Until then, see ya, Felicia.